It's now 4:30. I'm going to call the May 27th, 2015 meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Could I have a motion, please, concerning the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move the agenda with the addition of item 14 that was distributed to members this day.
Mr. Regala, do you second that motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Could I have a similar motion, please, concerning the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Is
I
there?
will second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any customers to be heard? Any recognitions, Bill?
No.
Okay. Before we go any further, there was an article in today's forum, or the Inform, if you are of the digital variety. And I don't know if anybody's seen it. If you haven't, please do. The students at Horizon Middle School did a shout out. They did a great job. And if you want to feel good about some entertaining young people in this community, please take a look at that video. That having been said, any old business?
No.
Don't have to sound so upset about it. Members of the City Council, Heidi, what have you got to say for today?
Well, not a whole lot. City Council last night just approved some sidewalk improvements, some easement acquisitions along Highway 75, or through Highway 75, Main Avenue to 8th Street. So those really were the only things that I think were pertinent to MPS. Some work at Horn Park, flood mitigation improvements. That's about it.
Okay. Any questions anybody has for our council representative? Any members of the Public Service Commission have anything to report? Les?
I have two, and they're only sort of related to what we're doing up here today. Tonight at 7 p.m. at the Moorhead Library, the three legislators, Senator Eakin, Representative Lean, and Representative Marquardt, will be at the Public Library in Moorhead to give us an update on what did and didn't happen with the Minnesota legislator, what passed and what was vetoed.
Seems
So
to be a very
anybody out
broad
there-
subject this year.
Yes. Anybody out there that wants to come and hear what they have to say, 7 p.m. at the library. And tomorrow evening, there's something that's near and dear to my heart. Every year at this time, some of us get together and we hold a veterans picnic at Bonanzaville. Food starts at 5:30. It's all free. And this time, for the first time, we will have Vietnam veteran as our guest speaker.
Anything further?
Nope.
Thank you, Les. Mr. General Manager, anything to report?
Just a few items that...
Excuse me,
Oh,
Mr.
go ahead.
Regala, you've got to speak up because,
I just thought I might...
I'm old and don't hear well.
might add here just to let you know that at the last council meeting, there was a referral to the EDA about an incentive program for development projects within the city of Moorhead. EDA looked at that and they have made a recommendation that I believe will go to council next month here for it. So it's an enhancement to the programs that would be available for development projects in not a renaissance zone, but a specific area in the part of Moorhead.
Okay. Anything further? Yes, Heidi.
Just to clarify just a tiny bit, John, were you referring to the redevelopment incentives? Okay. Yeah, the EDA is looking at reconfiguring how they come up with redevelopment incentives. And so instead of basing it on a percentage model, it will be just based on a flat number of years and a monetary value. Kind of a way to simplify it, make redevelopment options easier in our downtown area. Not just our downtown area, but predominantly.
Sounds exciting. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Mr. General Manager.
If there's any questions on what's written in the written report, I'll answer those, but I do have a couple of other items. One was, and I left it at your desk there because the mayor sent along a very nice comment about our reliability. And some of you didn't get that by email, so I thought I'd print it out.
Some
So-
of us couldn't open it by email.
Yep, so I figured I'd just give it to you there. Another one is, we've had a long-standing conflict with Burlington Northern Santa Fe, and I should say we, I mean Missouri River Energy Services, for shipments of coal to the power plant in Wheatland, Wyoming, the Laramie River Station. And if you recall, I mean, probably a couple of years ago, there was a ruling by the Surface Transportation Board in our favor that we were going to be reimbursed by about $19 million. And again, we as Missouri River Energy Services as a whole. So for us, it's about 1.9 million because we're about 10% of Missouri River. Of course, Burlington Northern appealed that, and that's been going on for the past couple of years, but they just had a settlement, and the settlement, was to get rid of that appeal. And the good news is that they are happy with this settlement. It's about 85% of what we had before, so we did give up about 15% of that 19 million, but we settled all the claims, and we retain a favorable contract over the next 10 years that Burlington Northern agreed with. So there'll be more, I'll provide more information on that next, at the next commission meeting in the GM report, because I'll have more information available, but that just came out here in the last day, so it just came out yesterday.
Is that money that's going to go to MRES, is that going to be distributed, or is it going to remain with MRES?
It is money that'll hold down rates. I mean, I don't think it'll be...
It's not quite what I asked.
Yeah, it'll probably go into their, I don't know, probably go into their reserves, or it'll hold their rates down. It hasn't been allocated up to this point. It's been basically set aside because we didn't know for sure how the appeal would turn out. So it is good news because it's not money that, was allocated anywhere or being...
But it is money that the members have already paid.
Right. So now that brings up, Tom Heller will be at the end of June commission meeting here.
Gives
and
us
you can-
something to look forward
and
to.
you
We
can
can
ask
pose
him-
that question.
You can ask him that question.
Yeah.
You can say, that there's been a...
He certainly did allocate those transportation costs when he received them.
Yep. And he'll talk about that, and he'll be able to answer the questions on that. So that'll be good timing to have him here.
Good.
Would you tell the group who Tom Heller is, please?
Tom Heller is the CEO of Missouri River Energy Services, our supplemental power supplier. They're located in Sioux Falls, and Mr. Heller previously was the general manager at Moorhead Public Service. So
We trained him,
and he'll be at our next meeting.
so he shouldn't be keeping all our money.
Right. And when I say the next meeting, I'm talking about the next regular meeting where we have it here. We are tentatively scheduling a water plant tour at the June 16th commission meeting time. And we will keep the June 16th meeting on the schedule, but that one was one of our if-needed meetings. So we would plan to meet at dispatch and then do a water plant tour, and we can look at the high service pumping station.
Is this just going to be the water treatment facility, or are we also going to go out to the wells?
Well, it depends on how much time you want to take. I mean, there's a lot to see right there at the plant because
That's
the
true.
high service pumping station construction is going on right now. So I think I'd limit it to that and spend a lot of time at the plant and
Okay.
at the high service, because there's a lot to look at. That'd be my recommendation. We can do and we can do the well tour almost on an individual basis as well, if one commissioner wanted to go out there.
Okay, well, I know we'd asked that we schedule a tour for some of the members of the city council as well as our newer members. And I know that Ralph would like people to see what we're talking about when we talk about the condition of the north well pumps and so forth.
We could certainly get some, blown up pictures of the pumps that are located at the wells.
I don't think
'Cause, I
that's
mean,
what Ralph had in mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's not a lot to look at because it's really a small building with pumps in it. So, I mean, it's not like you necessarily have to go out there and look at it. Because we have old pumps that we're replacing with this high service pump station
Okay.
too that we could
We'll
take a
talk
look
about
at. Yeah, we can talk about that. So that's that one. And then the legislators were at the MBA breakfast this morning as well, and they provided a good update. And afterwards, we talked a little bit about some electric issues that are out there. The only thing that's really pertaining to us is the omnibus energy bill was part of the jobs energy veto that the governor did, along with the education veto and some other things. And there's one provision in there basically that talks about how we allocate costs for renewable energy. And we're working jointly with the cooperative power associations in Minnesota and the municipal utilities to make sure that the legislators make sure that we can allocate costs appropriately when it comes to renewable energy projects. It's probably more important to the cooperatives than it is to us, but we are working jointly with them on that issue. So I did talk to both legislators about that. It's mainly a non-controversial issue, and like I say, it probably means more to the cooperatives than it does to us, but it's probably a good idea as well. Finally, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, there was an article in the paper about the power plant and the botanical garden area, or the possibility that there may be a botanical garden there. I made a comment that we would probably, or I would rather see something developed there other than another garden. And then we do have the Heritage Garden going there as well. There was some follow-up emails that talked about the TIF district that we have located at that. Well, we don't have it just yet. And I thought I'd give you some dates just so you can kind of remember a timeline. Because back in 2013, the commission and the council talked about this and talked about creating a TIF district there so that if development happened, we possibly could get some reimbursement on our demolition costs and our environmental cleanup. By November 12th of 2016, so next year, the council, and I'm not sure, either the council or city staff has to certify a TIF district, a tax increment financing district, and so that's by 2016, November. And then we would have to redevelop that area, or a developer would have to redevelop that area by November 12th of 2020, 4 years beyond that. And so basically, a year from now, a year and a half from now, a TIF district has to be approved, and then we've got 4 years to redevelop it, and then we would possibly see some reimbursement for our environmental costs. That's why I made the comment that I would prefer something developed there versus a garden. And but that's not going to be my call as to.
Well, in order for a TIF district, if you will, or a tax increment financing district to work, you have to have tax revenue to come into the stream of cash. So if you have a tax exempt organization owning the property, you would not have that revenue, we would not get the reimbursement. And there were lengthy discussions at the time. As a matter of fact, we advanced our time frames in terms of cleanup at the power plant site at the request of the city, because there's some funds available. That's part of what precipitated that whole conversation to begin with. We would have been years down the road for cleanup, but now it's all behind us. So it would be nice to get those funds coming back to more public service. And I think that's where you were coming from.
Yep. It never gets represented that
Well,
that way
that's what happens when you talk to the press.
That's right. So I just wanted to clear that up, but I think that's going to be debated.
There may be others who share your concerns.
Yep. So that's all I had for the GM report, unless there's questions.
Well, I have a couple of questions, really. The very kind note that we got from one of our customers through the mayor brings to mind that we had a power outage. It must have been a fairly substantial power outage on May 26th, or 25th, whichever. I received a text message from a customer at 3:04 a.m. Letting me know about a power outage because he happened to have my phone number. The good news is I slept through it, but when I did wake up, one of the points was, did I have the numbers for more public service? Because apparently our phone system was not operating correctly from the customer standpoint and they weren't getting through. What's the story with that?
I'll have maybe Travis come up to talk maybe about the outage and about the
Yeah, make Travis talk to us. You're lucky that I slept through at 3 o'clock in the morning, by the way.
That's good.
You didn't? You were awake? I'll give him your number for next time.
Well, it was the only time in memory it affected us.
On the
good
south
people
side, yeah, I
south side of
understand.
Moorhead.
Well, and we've actually had 2 outages. You may want to talk about both of those.
Sure.
Because we had 2 significant outages.
Okay, Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. So May 17th, we had an outage in our northeast substation. That took out 2 of our feeders. The actual outage or fault was actually in the switchgear at the northeast substation. That took down the feeder to Crystal Sugar and feeder 27, which is a feeder that feeds part of an area of North Moorhead. We have been working with some manufacturers and DGR Engineering as well, trying to order some new equipment because we need to replace those 2 pieces of switchgear. The fault was large enough to where it caused a lot of damage to the equipment. So we're working on that. Luckily, Crystal Sugar was not running or cutting beets at that point in time, so they were just doing their manufacturing or packaging process. So we're working on that one to get that one fixed. Hopefully we'll have it ready so that it's back on by campaign time. And then we
Does
also,
Crystal have its own inline generation out there?
they do, however, those were not operating because they weren't actually making sugar at that point in
Okay.
time. So they were running on a lower load. We also had an outage Monday morning at 2:38 roughly. It was an outage down on 40th Avenue. We got most of the customers back on within about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We found the we found the actual cause of the outage. We had a switch that actually had burned up on 8th Street and 40th Avenue. So we've got that switch replaced now and everything is back to normal. The outage we thought was an underground fault was not that. It was actually a switch had burned up.
Okay, let's get back to my question then.
On the
And
phones.
thanks to you and the staff for getting on those things.
Okay.
Regardless of the outages that we laugh about up here, we do have great service in Moorhead.
So
What's with the phone system?
well, we are still investigating what actually caused the problem. We could not get the phones to transfer back over so we could actually start picking up calls or getting a notification saying that, yes, we're having an outage. We're still looking into it. It doesn't sound like it was an issue on 702's end, who provides the phone service to us. We're just not sure if it's something in the system. We've got Kurt still working on that, trying to figure it out.
Okay, because I've heard that same complaint in the past when people couldn't get through. And normally I would put that off as an issue at dispatch when they're busy trying to get crews out.
Yeah, we're not sure if something locked up because of the outage or what happened. Kurt is still trying to figure out what actually caused the phones to not work.
Okay, can we get a report back on that? Because this is a fairly new system, is it not?
Yes,
It
it's
is.
about a year old.
And the other issue is that the dispatchers aren't operating in the middle of the night.
No, we did have a dispatcher in, but he could not get the phones to transfer over, so.
Because, we transfer them over to the water plant, which is operating 24 hours. Not very often that we get an outage in the middle of the night, but a dispatcher has to come in
Yep.
when we have an outage like
Yeah.
that.
Thank you, Travis. Anybody have any questions for Travis?
Yep, and we'll get a report back to you.
I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything further, Bill?
No.
The next item is item 8E. This is the Les Baki item. This is to accept the report on the proposed water tower art project. And who's going to speak to this one? I see Sue's here today.
Sue is here, and she can make her way up here. Really, this is to provide an update on the water tower art project, which is moving forward. However...
Is it now?
Well, and we do have and it says right in the report that there's how do I say that? That the commission had significant reservations about placing artwork on the tower beyond simply Moorhead. So, I mean, it will be the commission's determination on what's put on the tower eventually. But Sue's here to talk about the art project itself, and they're working with the schools and working with the kids. And Lee is here as well. You can introduce Lee as well. So,
Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a hostile environment, but at least 2 of us are not here.
You guys are fine.
Yeah, okay.
So Sue Leggett, local artist, and I am the creator of the Art Tower project, and I'm here to present sort of an update on what we've been doing since the last time I spoke. Before I start, I'd like to introduce Lee Dornfield. She's the director. The coordinating teacher for the Gifted and Talented program for Moorhead Public Schools.
I'm speaking first because I have another engagement I need to get to, but I wanted to make sure I had the opportunity to tell you our administration and our principals are really supportive of this project. It's given our students that aren't necessarily celebrated or recognized for their artistic talents a chance to have this opportunity. Through the project, they are learning about the history of Moorhead, whether that's the ancestry or about the river, and they've just really, really enjoyed it. The best part is through the discussions with Sue that the children have been having with her, they're letting their voice be heard, and it's fun to hear their ideas about their community and for them to become more invested in just what their community is all about, learning and having opinions about it. So it's been a great experience, and I just wanted to make sure we shared that with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Which schools are involved?
The 3 elementary buildings, we've been working with 4th and 5th graders at Ellen Hopkins, S.G. Reinertsen, and Robert Asp Elementaries.
So I'll come back. I did put together a brief PowerPoint just to sort of show what we've been working on.
Is this beyond the happy face that Les wanted up there?
Yeah, it is. And I do want to reiterate, as Bill said, that I'm not proposing going all rogue and painting the tower. Nothing is going to be done without the final approval of the commission. And so I anticipate it being more of a freelance designer kind of commercial aspect where I work with the students, and I do want to expand to work with senior citizens and the colleges and different people to kind of get a better idea of how the community would like to see what the community would like to see on the tower. That would become a design which would be given to you. Then you look at it, get some feedback, I rework it, give it back to you, and go back and forth until we come up with something that we feel is appropriate for everybody. So I can just flip through this. Right now we're collaborating with the Moorhead Public Service, Moorhead Public School District, the Clay County Historical Society, and the Moorhead Center Mall. I have reached out to the Rourke Art Center, but they're going through a bit of a transition phase, so I haven't been able to line up anything solid with them just yet. I want to thank Lee Dornfield. Mark Peel at the Clay County Historical Society is very supportive of this as well, and he and I have been talking back and forth. There's a project that we're hoping to do this fall involving Mark and some pioneer journals that they've recently come across. Melissa Redmacher, the manager of the Moorhead Center Mall, has agreed for us to exhibit the first 2 projects that the students have completed, and Lee and I have been working on putting those on display downstairs so you can see them on your way out. And then Garrett, whose last name I didn't get, but he's the manager of the Moorhead Pizza Hut. I just wanted to cite him. It seems kind of random, but one of the projects are these 12 by 12 tiles that the kids collaged, and when we had to transport them, we thought pizza boxes made the perfect container, and Pizza Hut in Moorhead was willing to donate about 40 pizza boxes. So I just wanted to cite him and say thank you. The first project was done by 4th graders, and they decided to call it the Moorhead Tree. They are doing a creative research on the history and the demographics of Moorhead citizens. What they did was they're taking photographs of Moorhead citizens, and they're asking them 2 questions. What is your ancestry, and what generation of Moorhead resident are you? From that, they're putting their photographs onto leaves, and the color of the leaf indicates the generation of Moorhead resident, and then they decorate the leaf to show the ancestry of that particular person. And with this group, we talked about the 2 primary ethnicities or ancestral roots that formed Moorhead, which was Norwegian and German. And the kids, through their research and through the project, they were exploring why are so many diverse people coming here, and what are the new cultures that are here today, and how are they being represented in the community. The other project was called Red River Collage, but after I put this PowerPoint together, the kids decided they wanted to change it to Historic River. This is a collage project with 12 by 12 inch tiles where the students did research. They were each given a 3-year period of time from 2014 back to, I think we got as far back as like 1921, and they had to research the crest levels of the river during their 3-year period. And then using that information, they transferred onto these tiles from what is now Trollwood up to Johnson Park is the range that we worked with. So depending on the width of the river that you see on the tile, that is indicating whether it was a drought period or a flood period. And it wasn't until Lee and I were actually placing the tiles that if you look at it downstairs, you can see it starts off really narrow. And there's a brief period where it gets wide and then it gets narrow, and then all of a sudden in like the last 15 years, it gets very wide very quickly. So here's a couple images of kids collaging. So based on what we talked about last time, I did want to show some examples of what other cities have done in terms of putting graphics on their tower as opposed to just this name of their city. So here's an example. This is Perm. I'm personally not a fan of this tower, which is hard for me to say because Perm's my hometown. But I think this is a nice example of, when I say art, I should say graphic enhancements or aesthetic enhancements that represent the people in the city of Moorhead, not like a kid's drawing that is being painted onto the tower. It's going to be a formal design. And then this is in Detroit Lakes. So an example design that I came up with, and again, I had to get something in the PowerPoint before I had the opportunity to do closing discussions with the kids, but I have some things that the kids wanted me to share. So this is an example design that I came up with based on conversations with the students as we were going through the project. At the top, the two scrolls at the top are reflective of Norwegian and German folk art. The scrolls at the bottom are reflective of Polish, Kurdish, French, Italian, Irish, and Mexican folk art. So it was where we started and where we are now with the base of the culture. And then I took an image and kind of popped it in there so you get an idea of what it might look like when it's actually installed. And again, this is not a proposed design. This is just to give you an idea of kind of the direction that we're thinking in terms of design. Future projects, we've got a couple things that we'd like to do with the middle school, the high school, and then additional projects with the elementary schools. The one at the middle school that I'm excited about, again, they found some pioneer journals or founding journals from when Moorhead was being settled, and one of the ideas that the middle school teacher had was to take those journals from the Clay County Historical Society and work with middle school kids to illustrate some of the stories in the journals and create a book, or that could be turned into an exhibition at the Rourke. But again, it's kind of learning about those very early stories of Moorhead and how we've changed over the years, and if that's a representation of who we are today and how we want to turn that into a tower. The kids came up with a couple of ideas, including a couple catchphrases that I just want to share briefly. One idea was to paint the tower to resemble a tree, except instead of using leaves, we would collect descriptions of Moorhead from the citizens, like friendly or safe, and the leaves of the tree would be those words. Another idea was, because I believe there's the plan to create a fourth tower, they wanted to create sort of a cityscape of Moorhead, including the landscape and the native plants and animals, and then each tower would be one of the 4 seasons. And then the last idea the kids had was to have the Red River flowing up the stem of the tower to the base of the dome, and there would be sandbags there, and then a ring of people above the sandbags, and then a ring of neighborhood houses, and then Moorhead. And some of the slogans the kids came up with was Moorhead, small city, big heart. Moorhead, a community of partnership. Moorhead, many people, one soul. And Moorhead, everyone's invited, based on their conversations and the research that they've done. So.
You have to ask yourself why the city would go to a marketing specialist to come up with a logo for the city when the children at the schools can do a better job.
You know, they were so excited about talking about this, and they had so many ideas, and it was kind of funny when we started, because essentially I was working with 6 different groups of kids, because there's 3 schools and then 4th and 5th grade at each school separately, and each group kept kind of coming back to similar ideas, and so it really kind of broke down into like 3 or 4 ideas. But they were great. They were so excited, and I did audio recordings of these conversations, and there's a few things in there that I want to share with some of the city planners or the mayor or with you, and just some of the thoughts that the kids had about their city and why they liked living here or things that they thought we could do a little better. So.
Any questions? Well, she said she'd involve the senior citizens. I'm assuming that means us.
That's the plan. I do want to expand the project to focus on more citizens in Moorhead and not specifically the K-12, but a little bit of a heavy emphasis on them.
Actually, it looks like a fairly exciting program that you've already started, even if we don't go along with doing something on a water tower. Any questions?
A couple of comments. I still am opposed to putting whatever it is on a water tower for the next 20 years. I just don't like that, and I haven't changed my mind on it. And I looked around at many things, including names of, M State wasn't M State 20 years ago. Lots of things change in 20 years. It's a very long time. Having said that, the project that you're working on, other than calling it a tower project, I think is awesome. I'm on the Historical Cultural Society of Clay County Board. I think you should use our organization to do these displays. They change every 3 months, not every 20 years. The Rourke, I believe, would do the same thing. They change their displays every 3 to 4 months, not every 20 years. It's this 20 years of the same thing sitting on a water tower that just bothers me.
And I think if I can address that, with the students looking back and talking more abstractly about who we are as a people and as a community, a lot of the terms they used were friendly and safe. And I personally, as a resident, I don't anticipate that changing much in the next 20 years. But I do see a problem, for example, with the new city logo, because what if the Yump comes, God forbid, burnt down? Then we have that reminder on the water tower for the next 20 years. So I think creating a design that addresses who we are as a people, as opposed to one single symbol, physical entity within our community, is safer in that regard.
Well, I don't believe that Moorhead is going to change its name in the next 20 years. So Moorhead on the tower is my preference.
I think those adjectives fit us very, very well, and that part of it intrigues me far more than happy faces or other things that we've seen,
Right.
or yellow jackets or whatever on the side of a water tower. I tend to agree with Les. It's going to be there for a while. We have to think it through, but it sounds like a great participatory project that you're doing, and it's anything you can do to get the young people in our community excited is a great idea. Mm-hmm. John?
The one area that I'm a little concerned with is the enthusiasm and the excitement that this is building. And if it's not an approved item, what is going to be the reaction or feelings of the people who are involved? And I think it would be significant disappointment. And then who and how are they going to respond or react to? And I think that potentially would have Moorhead Public Service look in a bad light, which is my concern.
And that has been part of our conversation with the kids, where we've said, we're doing this project, we hope we can take it further and maybe turn it into a tower. But the plan with all of the projects that we do is to have some type of exhibition or viewing of the work so that can sort of be the capstone for that particular project. So, for example, on Saturday morning from 10 to noon here at Moorhead Center Mall, Lee and I have organized a little bit of an opening, and the kids and their families can come and see their work on display. So
I would encourage that of using as many locations as possible, the mall, other museums, whatever, to have that public visiting or viewing of that art would be.
We were talking about this earlier, and that's sort of going along with what John says. I mean, there's so many other opportunities other than a water tower to display these things. like even banners to go on the light poles. Has any thought been given to that kind of, something that can be changed out
Yep.
more rapidly than every 20 years?
One of the other projects that a middle school teacher has proposed is having her students do architectural drawings of their favorite places in Moorhead. And then those, I've talked to the city about those becoming pennants on the lights throughout the city. So,
Okay. Well, thank you, Sue.
thank you.
You're always welcome to come here and report. We may disagree with you, you understand that, but,
Oh, no, I'm just fine with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
is there a motion to accept the report?
I'll move accept the report.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. And it is an exciting project, Sue, thank you. Item 8F is to accept the report on updated recommendation for fluoride in our drinking water. Now, there are
Yes.
those who think we shouldn't have any fluoride in our drinking
There
water.
is debate out there.
Yes, there is.
There may even be one at our meeting tonight, as you
Really?
will hear shortly.
Okay,
Water Division Manager Chris Knutson will.
he's
give
going
us
to
a-
defend this position, is he?
He'll talk a little bit about this.
Christopher Knudsen, Water Division Manager. So first off, just to describe the scope of this item, it's merely meant to provide information as to recent recommendations from the Department of Health and Human Services, basically the CDC. And so we're not asking for guidance or input regarding our current methodology of fluoride treatment. It's meant purely as an informational item. I just wanted to give a little background regarding fluoride and what the new recommendation means for MPS. And really, from my perspective, we'll have a financial savings associated with the new recommendations, which I think is a good thing. But essentially, MPS has a long history of fluoridation. Back since 1967, we started fluoridating our water based on Minnesota Department of Health guidelines. And we actually continued a constant level of fluoridation at 1.2 milligrams per liter up until very recently in October of 2014. In October, we were notified that the CDC would likely be changing their target fluoride concentration to a lower level. So we asked for permission to basically use a lower level of 0.9 milligrams per liter until we found out what that recommendation would be. So we actually implemented that and have realized some cost savings since that time for fluoridation, because we've adopted that 0.9 milligrams per liter of fluoride since October. Well, very recently in end of April, Department of Health and Human Services said that the new target would be 0.7 milligrams per liter. They've basically since the mid-70s had 1.2 milligrams per liter as their target level. So based on that new recommendation, the Minnesota Department of Health will allow a variance process whereby MPS could submit an application to adopt that 0.7 milligrams per liter target level that Department of Health and Human Services has adopted. And so it's anticipated that we would definitely do that, just because we've always followed the guidance of the Department of Health and the Department of Health and Human Services. So that's our plan. But again, it was really just to let you know that they'd changed their recommendation from 1.2 milligrams per liter to now 0.7 milligrams per liter of fluoride.
Is this a mandatory inclusion that we have to make? Do we have to include fluoride in the water treatment?
In Minnesota, we do. It's mandated in state statute. Brainerd, back in the late 70s, early 80s, challenged the fluoridation in Minnesota. They lost that challenge and have been adding fluoride ever since. So all the major, you can actually look it up on the CDC website, all the major cities in Minnesota do, because if you don't, the state typically, if you're a larger utility, they would force you to.
Okay. Any questions? Is this just an update on what's happening with the Department of Health?
That's correct.
Okay. Does somebody have a comment that they'd like to make?
I move we accept item 6 or whatever.
Is there a
8F.
second? Is there further discussion? Am I taking it that you, Heidi, are the one that wanted to make a comment?
Yes, I
Okay.
can't let this go without a comment.
Well, that doesn't surprise me either, but
Well, I'm happy to see that the amount of fluoride is decreasing. I support and I would like to see no fluoride added to our drinking water. It is a historic, it's been done for a long time, but back in 30, 40 years ago, you could also smoke cigarettes after you gave birth to a child in your hospital room. So things change and science changes, and we know that fluoride it's a chemical. It's supposed to be a topical treatment. It's not supposed to be ingested, even though it is a small amount. If you drink a lot of water, that's an unregulated dose of a chemical that we really don't need, because we can get fluoride in a lot of other ways. It's known to cause bone issues, cancers, neurological issues. So on top of it being a cost saving for the city to not do it, it would also be beneficial for infants, children, and adolescents to not have that in their water. Most of the world doesn't fluoridate their water. Most of the developed world, I should say, an undeveloped world doesn't fluoridate their water. There are a few countries in Europe that still do, but a majority of European countries, 90% I believe, do not fluoridate their water. So I had asked Chris and Bill if we could eliminate it completely, and they informed me that it's a state mandate, and that there haven't been a whole lot of cities that have protested it. I looked into what cities around the country even have tried to ban it, and while there are a number, there weren't any in Minnesota. So I don't think it's on our legislators' slates, but I have asked that our local legislators put it on their slate. So anyway, that is my little lecture, my little spiel.
thank you, Heidi. And in case you would like the record to reflect Heidi's comments, and there are people who feel strongly about those issues, but as Chris pointed out, we are somewhat forced to do what we're forced to do. We have a motion and a second concerning this report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. That motion carries. That brings us down to item 9, which is to approve an interconnection agreement and a capture of the energy rebate for a residential customer having a solar installation. Dennis, are you speaking to this, or is
Yeah,
Bill?
Dennis can come up and speak to this. This is similar to another, this is an additional person that has taken the incentive and put solar photovoltaics on their home. They have to have an interconnection agreement, and Dennis can explain that.
Hi, Dennis Eisenbrown, Energy Services Manager. Yeah, this is the last installation we did that we were part of last fall was done on a pole in a yard. This installation is actually done on the residential on the roof. Several sections of the roof, and they have about 6 kilowatts up there. It's a very good, very impressive installation.
Do we have any pictures of this?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Dennis can talk quite slowly if he has to, Casey. You know that.
Okay, well, this horse walks into a bar. No, just this person, they followed all the guidelines that we have for the interconnection process. They submit an application. We review it. We look at the site. We look at the sunshine data that is coming there, because we require a certain amount of average sunshine per year. What I tell people, I says, if you want to get a solar panel and put it in your closet, that's fine, but I'm not going to help you pay for it. What we want is we want some production out of it. We want a good resource. And so we require that they meet it's a state guideline. It's 90% unobstructed view. So this is the house.
Quite impressive.
Yeah.
What's the address?
Looks like it's on the Village Green area.
No, this is south of the Greenfields.
North of
And
Reinerson?
just north of Reinerson, just kitty corner of the new Hornbachers, that area. I think it's on 11th Street, I think, about 3800 block. So,
Okay, anybody have any questions for Dennis? Is there a motion concerning this matter?
I move approval item 9.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries.
thank you. Thank you, Casey.
My brother-in-law in California, who I was just visiting the last couple of weeks, has a solar array on his rooftop, and that saves him a substantial amount of money every year with Pacific Gas and Electric. Item 10 is to award a bid for equipment recoating at the water treatment plant.
This is Chris again.
I figured.
And there are some pictures on this one
I
as
saw
well.
that too. Is Casey putting them up on the? Sure. Thank you, Casey.
Right at this moment?
Sure.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Chris Knudsen, Water Division Manager. So this is a project to basically sandblast and recoat some of our critical equipment for lime softening at the water treatment plant. Essentially, this will be recoating all of the metal components of our softening basins, including some of the mechanical equipment. It's a kind of a picture tells 1,000 words type situation. So we're looking to get rid of all that rust and all that deterioration on that metal so we can recoat the metal materials and preserve the structural integrity of that particular metal.
Is the corrosion on that accelerator as bad as it looks?
It's as bad as it looks, but it's at the point where we can still maintain that metal for another 20 years.
Okay.
After this particular recoat is done, we'll have to replace it with probably new stainless steel.
Is this a similar application to what was there when it was built?
It's very similar.
Okay.
But it has not penetrated that main,
Well, it looks like it
Structure,
has.
yeah.
That's why I was asking the question, that this looks like it's about to fall into the water.
no.
Yeah. No, it's still structurally sound. It's just we need to coat it.
And after that, we
it's
would
like
do
an optical
what? We'd go
illusion.
to stainless steel?
Yeah,
And what would the cost of going to stainless steel be?
substantially higher than
Yeah.
recoat, probably in the $800,000 range.
Okay?
So yeah, one of the other, if Casey could scroll down, one of the other components is to recoat the lime silo, which is located at the exterior of the water treatment plant as well. And it's kind of a good news. We got some, what I believe are competitive bids. We had $400,000 budgeted for this project. We had a bid come in at $342,000. So it's actually difficult to find contractors that do this style and scope of work. So we did lobby some contractors that we were aware of. And we're only able to obtain 2 bids, but the bid was right on what we had projected for the cost.
What are you going to do with the silo?
Just recoat the exterior.
Could we put a sign on there? I just thought I'd ask, I'm sorry.
It's going to be gray.
I
it's
couldn't
gonna
help
be
myself
gray.
less. I really couldn't.
Mr. Chair, if
Yes,
you
sir.
want to put a sign on that silo, go for it.
Go. Do you, anything further, anybody have any questions for Chris? It seems as though there's quite a bit of money left on the table with this bid. Do I have a motion concerning the bid?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Oh, are you going to be taking item 11 as well? This is the approved the professional services for the chlorine risk management program audit?
That's correct. Every 3 to 5 years, we have to do an audit of our safety program for the chlorine that we maintain at the water treatment plant. So we actually have several chlorine ton cylinders at the plant, and because we store so much chlorine gas on site, we're required to do a couple different safety programs through the OSHA and EPA, both the process safety management program as well as the risk management plan. We have to do those programs, and it just helps us out to have an external audit of our safety plans, make sure that we're meeting compliance for those particular components of our safety plan. And the proposal is for $4,900, so it's fairly I would say, low priced for what we're doing.
If I remember correctly, with regard to the chlorine, that if there is a leak, or if we believe there's a leak, notices go to the fire department, and things can happen at the high school, which is right downwind from there?
Right. So we actually involve the fire department in the audit process. They look at our safety response plans, our leak response plans. We have a whole documented plan as to how we would respond to a leak. So they'll be participating in several components of the audit.
How much
as well.
chlorine is on site?
Between 4,000 to 8,000 pounds.
Can I have a motion concerning item 11, please?
I'll make a motion to accept, approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Item 13, to approve the 2014 Annual Management Report. Mr. Schwant?
Yeah, every year about this time, we do put together a management report that kind of details a lot of the financial and operational items in that the commission deals with on an annual basis. There's a lot of statistical data that's included in the report. We use it internally all the time to, do projections and compare performance from one year to the next. The letter that's included this time I draw your attention to because basically I incorporated in the letter the strategic planning process that the commission is now involved in. So I took I believe there are 11 items that we prioritized, and then what I did is I put some bullets underneath those on activities that happened in 2014 that really are, supportive or leading up to the discussion that we're currently having on some of those items. And that worked out fairly well. There was 3 or 4 or 5 bullets under each item that really we could use, and you may want to just read through that letter as we come down here and have our strategic planning discussions. The other thing that's, I think, is really interesting, and we just started incorporating that the last few years, is pictures of employees doing activities. Everybody has their smartphones now, and there's lots of pictures out there. So we gather some of the pictures of, the commissioners and employees in the community or elsewhere doing things. The first page, for instance, has President Norman speaking to the Kiwanis Club.
They all looked excited.
Pardon me?
They all looked excited in this picture.
Yeah, they all, well, you see former Mayor Mark Voxland right in the front row. And then, and then we just separate things out with the electric division, water division. Our operations manager, Joe Moore, has requested that next year the electric division is before the water division.
Well, Mr. Moore would.
So anyway, there's a number of things there that you can look at. A lot of graphs. I know you like graphs, so that's all I have.
Any comment by the rest of you? John?
I'm paging here, and I think it was in the water section where it listed the unmetered water. Is that the correct term that's used in there, Bill? I'm just paging here to see if I can find it here for it, but it seemed like that was a huge number that, would that be due to losses and water breaks and that sort of thing?
Exactly.
that
Chris
what
can address that. He's probably got some industry standard numbers. And what page are you on, by the way? Do you know?
He's still looking.
Still looking.
Okay.
Chris?
So MPS monitors unmetered water, and typically the biggest contributor to unmetered water is water main breaks or leaks that we haven't found yet. So the industry standard for unmetered water is less than 10%. For the last, I believe, 3 to 5 years, we've been either at or slightly above 10%. I believe 2014 was an exception because we had a tremendous amount of water main breaks in 2014, so I think we might have been more in that 14 to 15% range, although I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
It's a lot of water.
Do you remember offhand what it was, 211 million?
Yeah, that would be about in the ballpark.
Which was that? 84?
And with that being said, yes, with that being said, that would be, I think, encourage us even more so to look at replacing the water mains on an aggressive plan, because when unmetered is unpaid.
Right.
So the cost that is associated with that is significant for us to keep on incurring. And I realized it was one bad year, but it's still something that we, I think, really need to discuss further.
I thought you said Rolf wasn't going to be here. Sounds like John's been talking to him.
It's part of our, we actually quantify those losses in our water main asset management plan. So we do look at the lost revenue associated with that water, and it's definitely one of the motivators for our water main replacement plan, and why we've adopted the plan that we have.
Any further questions, John? Wes? Could I have a motion to approve, please?
I move to approve item 13.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That brings us down to a new item 14 that was added to our agenda, which is to approve an expanded Capture the Sun Community Solar Garden Project. Who's going to speak to this good news, bad news?
Yeah, I
thing?
can speak to this, and as Dennis maybe makes his way up here so he can answer any questions that might come up. Yeah, and we have actually good news and bad news. The good news was that we've had, and I think Dennis has updated the number even this afternoon, to I think 164 modules spoken for, actually more modules than that actually spoken for, because we've had to limit some. But we've got, we're oversubscribed in our Capture the Sun project. So that's the good news. And we're oversubscribed by more than double. And we actually are going to expand the system to be slightly more than double, but we're still not going to be able to take care of all the people that have subscribed to the program. That's the good news. The bad news is that we really didn't have the budget for double the number of participants.
So you're bringing this before us when neither of the Budget Committee members are present?
Yeah, so neither of the Budget Committee members are present, so now's a good time to approve this.
That's what they get for not showing up.
And, but I think it is good, I think it is good news, and I think it's, and I am recommending that you approve it, you know, because we've gone through the work of, you know, polling the entire community, sending letters, we got a good response, and the only issue that we've got, you know, kind of the obstacle in front of us is, you know, allocating some of the incentive dollars that you allocate on an every year basis, and you know, basically we're doing 2 years of incentives in one, because we're you know, we're about double with where we thought we should be or would be. The interesting thing about the incentive, and it's interesting that there was a earlier incentive at this meeting, we haven't had a lot of takers on the putting solar on the roofs. That was only our second, I believe, our second project that we've given an incentive for. So there's not much of an appetite yet, but maybe it's growing for large projects on people's homes. But there is a good appetite for, you know, everybody doing one module at a time, a community solar garden type project. So if there's questions, or Dennis, did I miss anything?
No, did a great job.
Are all of the little black rectangles that are depicted in this picture supposed to allow for future growth? Is that
That's correct.
okay?
Yeah, we have room for that. One of the things, when I first had designed this project, we were thinking smaller panels that were a little bit less efficient than what's currently available. And I was thinking that that area built up could probably, you know, produce probably about 200 kilowatts of power. But now the panels are a little bit more efficient, they're a little bit bigger, and they're actually lower in cost. They're coming down a little bit. But now that same area will now hold just under 400 kilowatts.
Okay.
396 actually.
Bill, since this is out of our budget, how are you taking care of the costs associated with it?
you know, our budget fluctuates based on sales and purchase power costs. This is going to be above our budget by,
That's quite an answer.
yeah, well, I mean,
Starting government.
Yeah.
well, that's,
Either that or he's running for office, one of the two.
I mean, that's why we're in front of you, because we don't have authorization to go over the budget on this
Exactly.
project.
That's why I asked, how are you
And-
paying for this?
And, well, I mean, it will either come out of operating, you know, hopefully we'll have a good operating year. By the end of the year, we've got some extra money. Otherwise, it's going to end up coming out of reserves.
Okay. Nancy, you're comfortable with this? Oh, there's a resounding yes.
You better get up to the mic if she's going to talk.
That's pretty good for an accounting person.
It really is.
Well, and the other interesting thing when we get to budget time is you could make the determination that you're not going to provide the incentive next year, which would be $30,000. So, I mean, I would recommend giving the incentive right now because you know you have takers and they're eager. And then if, but budget time, you feel like, well, let's go for a year without an incentive, you could do that, but,
Or not.
or not.
Yep.
But I mean, you know, so that's basically your two options is from operating or
I don't know if that
reserves.
answered my question, but Mr. Baki, did you have
It
another one?
didn't answer your question.
Thank you.
But I seem to remember earlier this evening, we approved 342,000 when there was $400,000 allocated. And, yeah, there's the spot right there. I was at the open session. I was at the Moorhead Business Association.
And you know that
Everybody's-
Nancy didn't want to spend that, right?
And actually, you know, the finance people can work with, I think it may have come out of water, but they can work
Yeah,
together.
it comes and goes according to
Yeah,
what the
that's
general
what Bill
manager said,
said.
yeah.
Well,
Anyhow.
you heard some, you
You're not
know,
gonna let me
rustling.
finish, huh?
You heard some rustling in the crowd here, and that's because we keep water and electric separate. And so you mentioned water helping out electric here, so there was a lot of just, you know, there's a lot of
Well, Joe
noise in
told
the
me
audience.
before the meeting started that electric helps out water every now and then,
Yeah.
too.
We're all a team.
Besides that,
Yeah, we're all a
I
team.
attended one of the two open sessions, and it was, you know, there were several people in it, and we got a really, really good response. I don't think we're quite prepared for people coming and signing up that night, but many, 14, 15, something like that, signed up. I was also at Moorhead Business Association a week ago this morning when Dennis gave this similar presentation to the people there. And then a couple days ago, I was on Memorial Day. I was at the American Legion, and somebody came up and said, how can I become part of this? And I said, call Dennis. So it does apparently have community support. It shows that we are looking toward the future and that sort of stuff. I wholeheartedly endorse it.
When we, and this experience, I think, sort of tracks with what we did when we had Capture the Wind. That was an overwhelming response from this community about doing this type of a program. And I tend to agree with you, Les. I'm in favor of it. John?
Couple questions as far as what is the next number up for us if we wanted to expand further?
Cost-wise or
No,
size-wise?
number-wise.
Number of participants.
We
Well,
have 160
well,
modules, but
right.
we only have 144.
144,
If we
right.
went to the next grouping, would it be
Right.
180 or
Well,
or 200?
The next grouping would be rebid, it would be an entirely another project. But it could be, you know, if we did another 20 kilowatts like we'd originally planned, that could, you know, depending on the size of the panels, it could be, you know, that's mid-60s kind of number we could add. And that's, right now, we have, you know, 144 panels available. We have 162 or 164 actually that people would like to have right now. And I still keep getting 2 and 3 applications every day yet.
Also, one of the meetings, Dennis, you said if we have a larger number of requests than we have capacity, we would limit the number of panels an individual could purchase potentially?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of people that have 2, 3. We have one, I think, maybe a couple of people that have 4 panels. And, you know, we might go back and look and ask these people if they will give up on it. Because we were initially encouraging people to get more panels because we had kind of a slow start. And so I said, well, you know, sign up for what you can. And then we did the larger push, and then we got the overwhelming response. And now, you know, I feel a little bad going back to some of these people say, well, if you asked for 4 and now we want to give you 1. I don't feel a little bad about that, but it's not off the table. I think, that's open.
The other thing is, time-wise, we gave them a deadline of May 14th.
14th, correct.
And we probably had 130 by that time, maybe, and then they were still trickling in, and now they've trickled up to 160, but it was past the deadline, so it's okay, probably. They knew that we were going to put them on a waiting list if there wasn't enough room. But I do think, I know a couple of commissioners have said, you can have my other one, to get more people participating, and I think that's a good idea. But I'm kind of with Dennis. I'm not sure we're going to go back to anybody and say, would you give up one of yours, If anybody's hearing this and they wanted to just go from 2 to 1. But really, and then the other thing, as far as timing of a new project, if they do trickle into where we've got 60 more than this 144, I was going to make a thank you to our staff for the team effort on this, because we had a bunch of us out at the site looking at, at the site to prepare for, the next array. And I think the next array, once we have the site prepared, it's going to be easier to do. So we'll be ready to go with that next array. Like Dennis said, though, we do have to do another bid for that.
How far off the ground are those panels?
About 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it going to be enclosed with the fence?
Initially, no. The idea is actually to have people be able to walk around the arrays. We will have a central spot that will be fenced off, that will have some of our equipment that we don't want people turning breakers on and off. But the idea was, it was always to have people be able to interact with the solar garden. Like you would walk through your flower garden, walk through a solar garden. Only the engineer could say that with a straight face.
I understand that.
Yeah. But, if we do have problems with
Tiptoe
vandalism.
through the solar, yeah.
But if we do have problems with vandalism, then we'll look at fencing off the whole area. But initially, the idea is not to.
Okay. Gentlemen, do we have a motion concerning this
I move to
amendment to the budget?
approve item 14.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That carries. Casey, quite frankly, this is really good news for Moorhead, and I would hope that we could put together a press release, because there was a recent article on everybody's looking at solar right now, and we've had an overwhelming response to this program, and I think we should let people know that that's how Moorhead responds to these types of things. But I know you'd take care of that anyway, Casey. Okay. Any further business to come before the meeting? We have a meeting on June 16th if needed. It sounds as though that's going to be a tour of the water plant for the members of the commission. I'm assuming we're going to invite our friends at the city council as well.
The city council, I made Mike Redlinger aware of it, and once we get things firmed up, we'll send them a email. And it will be open to the public. It's a public meeting, so if someone is interested, we don't want hundreds of people there, but I don't think we'd get hundreds anyway. But if
and then after that, we'd have a meeting on June 30th. Les, were you going to add something?
I was going to add that it is a public meeting, so the public is certainly welcome. And in the past, we've had a few that have shown up for it. And I do remember we did a bus tour one time, and there were a few that showed up for it from our
That's one of the joys of having a public body like this. The members of our community own Moorhead Public Service, and we welcome their participation in these various things. Anybody else have anything? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.